everyone. Welcome back to Intuitive Vibes. Erica here yet again with another one. If you're new to the channel, if you're seeing my content for the first time and you happen to find it to be helpful, useful for any situation, please be sure to subscribe as I do update my content often. And to all of my returning subscribers, welcome back. In this video, what I wanted to talk about was narcissism versus bipolar disorder. Now, I decided to do this video because in my journey of learning so much more besides experience, I've learned that people who suffer from bipolar disorder have certain characteristics that resemble narcissistic personality disorder. So in this video, what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over the two main issues that, though they share the same characteristics, are completely opposite. Now, the key thing that we have to understand is that narcissistic personality disorder, we'll call it NPD for short, is a personality disorder, which means that you are not born a narcissist, you're not born with narcissism, you're not born with the personality disorder. This is a disorder that has basically built up over time, depending upon, of course, your environment, your upbringing, so forth and so on. Bipolar disorder, however, a lot of different factors can play in it. Now, bipolar disorder can really stem from genetics, meaning that if you have history in your family of bipolar disorder, there is a chance that you may inherit that trait. Bipolar disorder affects millions of Americans. Approximately 10 million Americans have bipolar disorder, and it can pretty much come about whether you are a young child or a teen. And though it usually develops in late teens to early adulthood, bipolar disorder is capable of developing in children as well as older adults. Anyone is capable of developing bipolar disorder. Anyone is capable of developing the symptoms as well as the different types of characteristics associated with bipolar disorder. Millions of Americans suffer from bipolar disorder, and some don't even know that they do. And in this video, we're going to go over bipolar disorder. We're going to go over the similarities as well as the differences with narcissistic personality disorder, and some of the treatments that those who suffer from bipolar disorder do to cope with it, because bipolar disorder does last a lifetime. Now, considering that anyone is capable of developing bipolar disorder, most wonder, where does it originate? Well, medical researchers believe that there are a lot of different factors that give you the explanation to bipolar disorder. Genetics. If you have history of bipolar disorder within your family, your bloodline, there is a big possibility that you may develop it. And remember, bipolar disorder is a neurological disorder. It's within the brain. NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, is a personality disorder, which means that you're not born with it. You are just basically formed throughout your life to be a narcissist. Not you personally, but a narcissist themselves. Bipolar disorder has a lot of other factors that fall behind it, and the person who suffers it has no control. Now, I did a little drawing here, and I'm pretty sure you can't really see it too well, but I'm going to explain it to you. And hopefully in the future, I'll be able to have the setup just set up a little bit better. But medical researchers believe that bipolar disorder originates from a chemical imbalance. It's a chemical imbalance within the brain. Now, you have cells that need to communicate with other cells. So, for example, you see here, this is a cell. This is a secondary cell. In between is what's called a neurotransmitter. A neurotransmitter is pretty much that thin line that sends a signal from one cell to another. So it's pretty much the messenger. It's the mailman, basically delivering mail from one cell to another cell. Now, someone who suffers from bipolar disorder has an imbalance, which means that there's some kind of disconnect in between those two cells. Now, someone who has bipolar disorder, as you see here, one cell is going from the top to the bottom. Down here, one cell is going from the bottom to the top. That's the imbalance. When we're balanced, we're leveled. But when we're imbalanced, we're out of whack. Now, bipolar disorder, you have extreme mood swings. That is the disconnect between those cells. People who suffer from bipolar disorder suffer severe mood swings, and they go through episodes. Now, when they go through these mood swings and they go through these episodes, this is where it can get a little tricky, and people can get confused in believing that the person who is dealing with this disorder suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. Bipolar disorders are mood disorders where a person cycles between extremely high moods, which is called mania, and sometimes depression. Now, there are two types of bipolar disorder. Bipolar 1, which is the full manic episodes. Okay, this is considered the most dangerous one. But there's also bipolar 2, which is a type of disorder that is usually involving depression, which is also known as hypomania. So that's the complete opposite of the polar opposite of bipolar 1. Bipolar 1 is high highs. Bipolar 2 is pretty much low lows. But bipolar 1, even though the moods can be extremely high, the person can experience depression as well. Now, during manic episodes, symptoms can resemble narcissistic abuse, narcissistic personality disorder, because the person who suffers from bipolar disorder has a heightened sense of self-importance and lack of empathy. This is where it resembles with narcissism. But let's be clear on something. Narcissism is not a symptom of bipolar disorder. In fact, majority of people who suffer from bipolar disorder are not narcissistic. They're just basically going through a manic episode. So when they're in the highs, they're feeling like they're on top of the world and they don't care about what anybody says or does, and they lack empathy. It's understandable where we would confuse bipolar disorder with narcissistic personality disorder. Now, someone who suffers from bipolar disorder will display what's called disinhibition. And disinhibition is considered a lack of restraint, which affects motor, instinctual, emotional, cognitive, and perceptual aspects. So this is pretty much a point where the person is impulsive, extremely aggressive. They have very aggressive outbursts. They have no regards for anyone. And by anyone, it doesn't just have to be you specifically. It can be anyone. When they're going through these episodes, you have a lot of different things going on at one time. And it leaves you confused because you just don't know what's next. You don't know what to expect. And they can be pretty unpredictable. And as we know with narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, these are individuals, first of all, this is a personality trait, okay? It's a personality trait. It's not a neurological issue like bipolar disorder, because people who are perfectly mentally healthy suffer from narcissism because it's just something that's been embedded in their head. It's just something that they've been taught to do. People who suffer from narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, are people who have a high sense of self-importance. They have inflated egos. They feel superior. They feel like they're special and they should only associate themselves with those who are of the same caliber. Granted, they'll look towards victims to pretty much gain self-gratification. They have a need for validation. And they, can come off with very grandiose attitudes, which is pretty much, I'm better than everyone else. And some of them have no issues in demonstrating that to anyone. Some might be closet narcissists, but some are grandiose narcissists. So you gotta learn how to decipher between the two. But all other videos, we've gone over the many different types that you have. Now, bipolar disorder, people who suffer from it, can display certain things that a narcissist would display. when they're going through their manic episodes, when they're in their highest highs, like I said, they will demonstrate a sense of self-importance. They can get greedy with it too. They feel like, I'm more important than everybody else. I'm on top of the world. I'm happy-go-lucky. I'm the center of attention. And of course, with every high comes a low. So when someone who suffers bipolar disorder is in a depressive state, this also resembles narcissism. Because in a depressive state, they're pretty much neglecting their duties, avoiding any kind of contact, any kind of social contact. They are insensitive to other people's feelings. They disregard them. And most people would think, my God, this is a freaking narcissist. Chances are they're just so overwhelmed by their own negative emotions that they're not taking into account the feelings of other people. So you gotta remember, there is a big difference. And if you remember my other video that I put, is it narcissism or something else? I listed 3 other personality disorders that are similar to narcissism. But unfortunately, this one is more of a neurological one. Now, the symptoms for bipolar disorder are people who suffer this disorder experience extreme mood swings, which can last for long periods of time. Mania must last at least 7 days or less. Anything more than that is severe, and majority of the time, the person who suffers from the disorder has to be hospitalized. And in case of extremely depressive episodes, depression has to basically last for at least 2 weeks. Now, people who suffer bipolar 1 disorder may only experience mania, which is the high highs, and not even experience any kind of depressive state. Though some can, that's not always the case. Manic or hypomanic episodes would include a highly inflated mood, high self-esteem, increased sense of self-worth, extreme energy, little sleep, and little aggression. Now, extreme depressive episodes would include periods of depressed moods, which may cause intense sadness, guilt, excessive sleep, low energy, and hopelessness. Now, where the episodes can resemble narcissism, in the manic stage, they have the high sense of self-importance and highly inflated mood. In the depressive points, the depressive episodes, they resemble narcissism in that when the narcissist is rejected and has received narcissistic injury, because a lot of the time narcissists who receive injury can go into depressive states as well, where they can withdraw from everyone because they're tending to their wounds. Now, here are some of the factors of bipolar disorder. Episodes can either be brief or they can last for extended periods of time. Manic and depressive episodes combined are considered to be mixed episodes. And oftentimes, bipolar disorder can go unrecognized for years by the person who suffers it, family members, even friends. People with bipolar disorder oftentimes suffer from other health problems, which would include substance abuse, obesity, thyroid disease, anxiety disorders, and heart disease. And oftentimes, the manic episodes are reported less than the depressive episodes. So when the doctors are diagnosing and they're treating, they're mainly treating for the depressive episodes, not the manic ones. Why would they? Why would someone who suffers bipolar disorder report manic episodes when they're experiencing euphoria? You would neither, right? Doctors rarely treat bipolar 1 because bipolar 1 mainly is surrounded by the manic episodes, which is the euphoric stage, the highest of high moods. And of course, as with any type of disorder, there are triggers. And triggers with bipolar disorder would include sleep deprivation, medication, substance abuse, stress, even seasonal changes. Well, you can see that there are similarities between bipolar disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. But one disorder is neurological. The other is a personality disorder. It's a personality trait. Bipolar disorder is mostly treated with medication. But oftentimes, medication is not the sole solution in treating bipolar disorder. Because as with anyone, we're dealing with mental health. We're dealing with mental health awareness. There are other factors that need to be played in order to properly help someone cope with bipolar disorder. And that's, of course, being a good support group, them going for mental health therapy, and yes, using their medication, because the medication is basically what keeps them balanced. That imbalance, those mood swings can go really high, can go really low, and in some cases can get dangerous. Well, guys, as we learned, bipolar disorder is a neurological disorder, and it's a disorder that can happen to anyone. And if you have bipolar disorder in your family, if you have a history of it, I strongly, strongly advise that you go and seek professional help, just to be on the safe side. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with getting yourself checked just to make sure, because if you can imagine all these different episodes that they go through, yet they can't really control it, especially if they're under the impression that they don't have bipolar disorder. I can only imagine how frustrating it is. I can imagine how extremely frustrating it is, because the normality that one would want to have in their life, they can't have it because they're living based off of these different moods. Well, guys, I hope this was informative, and I do hope you're like my little stick figure person there in the back. I hope that I was able to properly explain it to you and simplify it in the best way possible. But we often look at someone being narcissistic. We often look at them being, so many things. And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, is this really what it is? Is this something that, don't get me wrong, a narcissist is a narcissist. And, you would know better than anyone else if you have a narcissist in your midst. But I do want to point out that there is that slight possibility that it could be something else too. You always got to look into different things. You always got to take different things into account. And, again, it's always best to be done under a medical professional, but it's good to learn as well. I do hope that I helped everyone. I do hope that I covered all of my bases. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. Feedback in the comments section. And, again, guys, intuition, discernment, educate yourselves, and really, really, really think about it. Before you go any further with anything, just think about it. Look further into things. Look at details. And always investigate. That's what I do. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I helped you all. And until next time, namaste.